Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world to share their insights and expertise so we can all grow together. I'm your host, Heidi, and I'm the co-founder of the Spotlight to Scale Accelerator, where we drive revenue for companies by making sure that they're seen as the authority and go-to expert in their industry versus just another product or service. I got to tell you, I've been having so much fun behind the scenes and laughing my tail off with today's guest. And I'm so honored for him to be here because he's got just such a stellar record, has created so much already in his life. So I'm so honored to be joined by Kasim
You
Aslam.
did it, Kasim.
So, Kasim Aslam. I love your name, Kasim. So thank you so much for joining me. And he's with Pareto Talent. So I'm so honored to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Heidi. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. So normally, Kasem, I don't do an introduction. I let you to do it, but I just want to share some background about you in case they don't go to the show notes. So Kasem founded Solutions and the world's Solutions 8, the world's #1 Google Ads agency, resulting in an 8-figure exit. He was named one of the top 50 digital marketing thought leaders in the country. Kasim co-founded Driven Mastermind, an invite-only community for high-performing entrepreneurs. He's co-host of Perpetual Traffic, ranked in the top 0.5% of marketing podcasts. And he's a two-time #1 bestseller author. And he has a book called The 7 Critical Principles of Effective Digital Marketing and so much more. So this is just a tip of the iceberg when it comes to Kasim's bio. So please go to the show notes and check him out for more information. So Kasim, can you start out by telling us a little bit more about you than versus what I just shared, who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your journey?
Yes, I would love to. I like to call myself the world's greatest failure. I actually don't think that that's a bad thing, to be honest with you. It's a brag, and people don't realize it's a humble brag. I'm a college dropout. I technically didn't really graduate high school. That's a long story we could dig into if you want to. And entrepreneurship is just the thing that I love more than anything else. And I love entrepreneurial people, and I want to help as many people as I can achieve 3x freedom, which is financial freedom, freedom of dimension, which means time and location, and freedom of purpose. And I've built 6 million and multi-million-dollar businesses. I've had 2 exits, one for 8 figures. I've generated a $10 million net worth, and I drive a 40-year-old Honda. Uh, and I say that last piece to say me talking about money isn't meant to be douchebaggery. It always frustrated me as an entrepreneur that nobody would talk about it. And you don't know who's done what, and
Right.
money is how we keep score. So instead of like renting a San Diego beach house on Airbnb and Turoing a Ferrari and shooting ads with myself in front of those things, I like to just say, here's who I am. This is what I've been able to do. And along that level of analysis, Alex Hormozy has done 10x that, right? So his advice is worth 10x mine, and Ray Dalio's advice is worth 140 times his. And it's okay for us to sort of, I actually think not just okay, I think it's necessary. And if somebody's pretending to be an expert, then I want to see your tax returns. Like I'm like, well,
Yeah.
show prove it. Why should I pay attention to you? So how did that land, Heidi? Did I do okay?
You're phenomenal. That landed amazingly with me because let's talk about authenticity. I had a whole stack of questions, but I'm curious. I want to dive deeper into that because that's powerful. So you talked about Alex Hormozy and his success and things like that, but you are truly authentic and unapologetically. And like you said, if somebody's telling you that they're a guru, you're going to ask for their tax returns. So asking questions is important. So was this a journey that you had to navigate, or did this come easy to you? Because I know for a lot of people, I'm in the coaching industry, we have an agency, and we work to help businesses and entrepreneurs become more visible and show up authentically. But it's a struggle because they're scared to share who they truly are for fear of being vulnerable. So is this something that came easy to you, or is this something that you had to navigate along the way? Because it seems
No,
very easy to you right now.
it gets easier. I hate to say this, but the more successful you get, the easier it is to air out your dirty laundry
Yeah.
because you have something buttressing your ego, let's say. I was a compulsive liar from the age of 7 to like 23. I
Wow.
would just lie through my teeth about everything in front of me. And there are reasons for that, but it ended up being such an inconvenience because I had groups of people that could never meet each other because I told them I'm an astronaut and them a cowboy. And if they ever met each other, they wouldn't understand, like it wouldn't reconcile. And group C can meet group A, but never group B. And, like it just got so, and so I just one day broke and I was like, I am just going to speak the truth regardless of what it costs me. It felt like something of a suicide, to be honest with you. It felt like I was like, I'm just giving up on this facade. I'm giving up on pretending. I'm just going to be honest. And the most amazing thing happened, which is people responded so positively to it. You know, they responded so like shockingly positive. And maybe, I probably over-indexed a little bit too. I mean, I probably overshared quite a bit, and maybe I still do. But Jordan Peterson says something that I love. He says, when you tell the truth, whatever happens next is the ideal outcome. So if you tell the truth and then you lose your job or your spouse leaves you, that's what was supposed to happen. And if we can reconcile ourselves against the truth is the most important fundamental and foundational principle in society and all of existence, authenticity kind of becomes unnecessary because authenticity is the word that we use when we like open the veil a little bit and we're like, oh, here's who I am, but then we close it. If you're just telling the truth, then authenticity is an a priori prerequisite. It's not even the hat that I have to wear in that moment. And so what was funny too is I actually started to make more money. You know
Mm.
what clients love? Clients love the phrase, I don't know. As a young man, as a young entrepreneur, I was so afraid to say I don't know. If somebody came to me and said, "Oh, does Joomla's database integrate with the, MySQL?" And I'd be like, "Oh, technically," and I'd just start making shit up. I call it Spreck in the Bushy babble. I would Spreck in the Bushy, and I would say something that kind of sounded right, and I was smart enough to get away with it, and then I'd go Google it later. And when I decided to tell the truth, I was like, you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And again, mind blowing. People were like, refreshed. Like on sales calls when I'd hop on with clients, like, oh, I had a Google Ads agency, and is Google Ads going to change my bit? No, probably not. Actually, let me tell you all the reasons this won't work. And they would just be blown away by like, oh my God, I can't believe every other agency on the planet is trying to sell, 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 sell. And I'm like, let me talk you out of this. It's one of my favorite things to say. Let me talk you out of this. So I think that the route that you take when you choose to be truthful puts you on a path that I'm not saying it's easy, but man, is it better? Like
Yeah.
it's just better. And that led to better clients, better employees, better engagements, better partnerships, um, better contractors, better fulfillment houses. And since then, it's kind of, I don't know. I almost I'm almost unsophisticated in my truthful displays sometimes. And so I think I can be a little more, use a little less brute force. But I hope again, there's no short answers with me, Heidi. I'm sorry I took such a
No, it's
departure.
no, I love the long answers because then that opens the door to more conversation. And I love the fact that we're diving into trust because when it comes to sales and growing, and I know you don't like the word scale, you share with me behind the scenes, and I want to learn more about why, which is exciting. But when it comes to growing a business and quote unquote scaling, people want to work with people they trust.
Mm,
And you can either decide to grow your business in a short term version, which you're showing up as a facade of who you
mm,
truly are and trying to just be like, answer all the questions. Or if you want to create this long term relationships and longevity of your business and your success, then you know what? You need to be truthful and go like, listen, I don't have all the answers because none of us do. We're human.
mm.
Right? We're not AI. And at the end of the day, that's what makes us special is because AI might have the answers. They're not always right, by the way. Do your research when it comes to AI, but also like they don't have the connection piece. People buy from people that they trust.
Yep.
And they're going to trust you by being open and honest and saying, listen, I don't really have that answer. You know what? That's a great question. I don't have that answer, and I'm willing to go find it out. And I may not be the right fit to work with you. We may not work out, but I will do that for you. I will go find that answer for you. And that means more to people and businesses than anything else. So no, I think it's fantastic that you share that. So you're never going to share too much and you're never going to talk too much. So thank you for that. So let's talk about Pareto Talent. Please share with us what that is, like what inspired you to, found Pareto Talent, and how does your mission align with your vision for empowering professionals in emerging nations?
When I sold Solutions 8, I had 100 employees. Six of
Wow.
them were stateside. Everybody else was in a different country. I sold with 40% margins in an industry that aims at 15% margins. We were minting money comparatively. And the number one question I got from the acquiring entity during due diligence, the due diligence process lasts 9 months. It's horrible. It's like just a long-term proctology exam. the number one question I got was, where do you find these people? Because I
Mhm.
had the most epic talent ever. And the thing that occurred to me, and still occurs to me, to be honest with you, is if you're in the emerged world, if we, we're going to use the PC terms, we are willing to outsource grunt work. So we'll outsource data entry and low-level research and cold calling and like the boiler room garbage. But most of us don't outsource. We think, oh, the real work needs to be done here. Like the
Mhm.
smart people are where you know what I mean? Look like me, sound like me, went to school like me. And I took a different approach, partially out of necessity, but I started staffing my business at the highest levels with talent in the Philippines or South Asia or North Africa or Latin America or Eastern Europe, places where other people don't do that.
Mhm.
And it put me in a position, one, to be way more profitable than most agencies can be because I had a fraction of their overhead. And two, and I think more importantly, I ended up with a I ended up with an employee base that was so unbelievably committed
Mhm.
because I treated them better than any employer has ever treated them. I paid them more than they could ever make domestically, sometimes by 3 to 5 times.
Wow.
I let them work from home on semi-flexible schedules, which, work from home jobs in the US are more or less ubiquitous now. That doesn't exist in the rest of the world, even post-COVID. It's not it can't just be assumed that you can go get a work from home job. And when you're hiring, I'll use the word domestically, and I know you'll probably have international listeners, but when you're hiring in the US, you're leftovers. Most employees want to work for Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, right? They want $12 croissants and big conference rooms and high rises and expense accounts. Or it's so easy to be an entrepreneur here, they're going to start their own business, like the super sharp folks, right? So like those are the poles. You have the people that go work for the Fortune 1000, and then you have the people that start their own business. Anybody left over, and they're not bad people by any means, but work is not their priority, right? They've got something else going on. I have a cousin who's like a brother to me. He's like this. Like work is not the thing that he lives for. He lives for his daughters, and he lives for fun and recreation, and work is a thing that he punches the clock. Those are the employees that we're left with. However, it would be hubris to think that the whole rest of the world doesn't have brilliant human beings, just like we have brilliant human beings. But Google, Amazon, Microsoft, or Facebook, they don't offer, VP positions to Julian in Colombia,
Right.
but I do. And so
Mhm.
you end up getting somebody who's triple PhD brilliant and willing to work their ass off, and interestingly, grateful to have the opportunity. We are aspirational to the international world. To get a job with a US company paying US dollars it's like somebody here getting a job with Google. And what people do wrong is they're like, oh, I tried outsourcing to India. It was a horrible experience. And my question number one is, first of all, what did you outsource? Because it was probably like, oh, I asked this human being to sit in front of the screen and do this data entry for 8 hours a day while I screenshotted their desktop and tracked their keystrokes. And let me tell you how poorly they did. You know what I'm
Oh,
like?
yeah.
What person could possibly do that job with any level of efficacy over the long term? And then two, oddly, we go to these international markets and we try to pay pittance,
Yeah.
even adjusted for context. Like you go to India and you're like, oh, the average employee in India makes $500. So I'm going to see what I can get for 450. Instead, I went the other way. I'd pay 3x and I'd get thousands of applications. And there's a whole process for filtering through this so you don't actually have to waste your time. I wrote a book on it. It's called Hire. It's going to be published soon. Your audience can have it for free. But I get thousands and thousands and thousands of applications where most people get a dozen or, at most 100. And I'm able to choose from my pick of the litter. And I treat them well, and I give them a semi-flexible schedule, and I pay more than they'll ever make domestically. But then I let them know I have unreasonably high expectations.
Mm.
And it's that's the trade. And I get the best people in the world. I get the best people in the world. My favorite story of all time was a young man from India. He was working at Google. Google was paying him $500 a month, which is what the average Indian Google ad specialist was making at the time.
Wow.
When I sold my agency, by the time I'd sold my agency, he was making $4,500 a month. He was making 9 times his white collar peers. 9 times. Imagine making 9 times what your contemporaries are making. He bought his parents the first house they'd ever owned. He bought himself a motorcycle. He got himself married, which in India is a very expensive affair. But, and he managed my biggest client. $54,000 was my invoice to them every month. So I charged these people 54 grand. I sent them as a client. Unkar was the lead strategist. Now there were other employees involved, and we were a big shop, and there's a lot of infrastructure. But it was such a beautiful example of the arbitrage available because I got the smartest Google Ads strategist in all of India for $4,500 a month. But everybody else wants to go to India and try to pay 450
Right.
bucks. But if you were here, if you were in the States, that same kid would have cost you 250 grand a year plus benefits, plus all the infrastructure and overhead and the expense account. And by the way, what's my title? And by the way, I just got poached by Microsoft. They're going to pay me 3% more. So the people available and accessible to you in international markets are unbelievable. They're amazing. They're miracles. And if you don't know where to start with an executive assistant. That's why I started Pareto, because that's the
Yeah.
number one role every entrepreneur should have. So we find and train these bloodthirsty assassins, and I say that tongue in cheek, like people that are really hungry, that want to do the work. It takes 4,000 applicants to produce 40 EAs. These are the 1%. And we're expensive. It's
Yeah.
3 grand a month where you could go to Colombia, Argentina, and you could employ somebody yourself for 1,200 bucks, but they're not going to be trained by us, vetted by us, managed by us. We stay the employer of record. We continue to train them on an ongoing basis. They're all AI enabled. So they're going to bring AI into your organization. They're going to 10x the efficacy of specific channels. And we've seen this over and over and over again. It's not just something that I say. And then what's cool is your EA, if you're doing it right, doesn't stay your EA for very long. You find out like, oh my goodness, this person is
Yeah.
amazing at X. My first EA became my director of social. My second EA became my director of automations. My third EA became my CTO, my business partner, and then my best friend. So your EA, it's like a flywheel. It's like you find it, you hire an EA, you have them do a bunch of different things. You assign them 10 tasks. They suck at 2 of them because that's life. They are passably good at 6 of them. And then they do 2 better than any human could possibly be expected to do. And what most entrepreneurs do, oddly, what we're told to do and trained to do by these stupid business books is take the 2 things they suck at and focus on those. And then you say, okay, kiddo, I'm going to get you there. And we're going to do a performance improvement plan. And you're going to go through training. And I'm going to have you shadow somebody that's good at it. And it's like, stop doing that.
Yeah.
Just don't make them do the 2 things they suck at. Go make them do the 2 things that they're miracles at
Yeah.
and get out of their way. Uh, I don't know why. I don't know who started. I feel like it's like a Rockefeller thing. I feel like it's like the old school Carnegie steel meal. Like this is just the way that things have to be done, and we're going to break everybody into the same mold. It's the way that schools run, it's the way that businesses run, and it's wrong.
Mm.
Every human is a literal miracle. The likelihood of the human being in aggregate and as an individual,
Yeah.
it's mind-bogglingly small. This like it's infinitesimally small. The likelihood of your very existence. If you look at
Exactly.
just your ancestors and the number of people whose genomes had to go into making you, like you are a miracle. I don't care if you're talking about 2 people from the same background that were born in the same city at the same hospital on the same day at the same time, delivered by the same doctor, went to the same schools, went through the same track, graduated from the same college, and married twins. Those 2 people are so different. And if you put those people in the same role, let's say pick something arbitrarily, content creator. One of them is going to be great at narrative. One of them is going to be great at structure. One of them is going to be great at persuasion. One of them is going to be great at ascension. Who knows what, right? Everybody's different.
Yeah.
But we don't hire that way. We build these roles and we're like, oh, I'm going to put you in my SDR department and you're going to sit here and you're going to do this. You're going to follow this script and you're going to do this thing. And if you can't do it the way everybody else does it, then we're going to beat you until you fit into this mold. And it's exactly wrong. It's like the exact opposite of the way that we should be treating people and be building businesses. And this is why I don't like the word scale. I actually think that scale is the most important concept from a business perspective for an entrepreneur to understand. And the reason I don't like it is because it's the same reason I don't like the word God. Well, I'll go back up. I think God is the most important thing for a human to pursue. But the way that I see God used in popular culture, in life, in literature, in politics, I'm like, that's not God. What you just said and what you just did, you're taking God and you're putting your agenda behind the most important philosophical and theological construct that can exist, and you're bastardizing it. And we're doing that on a much, much smaller scale, obviously, not nearly as important as God. We're doing that with scale. Scale is the thing to be pursued, but not, but they're doing it the wrong way. They're like, oh, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't scale. No, you imbecile. You have to do the things that don't scale in order to
You
build a business that
imbecile.
scales. The way that you hire people can't scale. The way you train people can't scale. The way that you treat people can't scale. So scale, yes, absolutely. Oh, I've made all my money with things that scale, but you scale by doing the things that don't scale, and
Mhm.
people do not scale. Like the human person cannot scale, otherwise would be robotic. And we're going to find out very quickly here what the difference is between a robot and a human being. And
Mm.
and I don't know exactly what that means or what the implications are or where the chips are going to fall, but people are miracles, and if we treat them that way, goodness gracious, like the value is immense. And I'm living proof of that. I've built 6, 7, and 8 figure businesses. And it's like, well, have I really? Or did I have 6 pretty good ideas and then I found a bunch of people that were smarter than me and I just got out of their way? I mean, you should see my calendar, Heidi. I'm not a busy person, right? Like I've made all this money and I've done all these things and I built all these things and I've got margin and I spend time with my kids and I'm going to Costa Rica and then I'm going to Colombia and I do what I want when I want, where I want, how I want it. And there are people that are way smarter than me, way busier than me, beating their head against the wall trying to make money.
Mm.
And all I figured out was, you know what? People are pretty amazing. And if I find amazing people and I treat them well and I get out of their way, I don't have to pull this sled up this hill by myself. They'll actually pull it for me.
Yeah, and that goes to everything you shared was incredible because it goes back to the concept, and I'm reading the book right now. Who Not How, the Who
Oh
Not
yeah, Dan
How.
Sullivan.
Yeah, by Dan Sullivan. I'm reading it like on Audible. I listen to it every morning and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, this is so true. If you really want to grow, you don't have to do this alone. It's not going to happen alone, but you have to treat the who's like you'd want to be treated and if not better. Right.
Right.
So, and there's so many people online that I see like, oh, get your VA for $9 an hour and blah, 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 blah. And then I hear all the time, oh, I've been through 3 VAs, 4 VAs, they're not fitting. And I'm like, well, do you know them well enough? Have you asked them what their wants and needs are? It's a communication and it's a joint relationship. It's not just you handing stuff off. If you really want this to be part of your team long term, then you've got to do more cultivating that relationship. If you want it to be just get this task done, then they've completed the task. But obviously, people go into it wanting more than what they're getting from it without being honest about, again, back to honesty and trust about what they're really looking for. I'm totally on board with you. Like, literally, and I've talked with a number of business people on this podcast, and there's a consistency around culture, creating a culture within your business. And you have
Hmm.
proven that because you've built 6, 8 figure businesses, you've exited 2, and it's because you've created this culture inside. Yes, we need to get clients and customers. We need to be able to fulfill that need, but we can't do it if our people internally are not happy. And you're creating a culture where you're like, you know what? And also the people that we need in our inner circle, in our employees or whatever you call them inside of your business, they're not necessarily in your backyard,
Right.
right? The most brilliant people could be outside, way out there, and you're not going to be able to reach them if you're not doing what you're doing, reaching out to them internationally and paying them above what other people can be paying them. They're going to be loyal to you and they're going to go above and beyond. People want to feel valued. And sometimes it's money, sometimes it's more freedom. I'm a mom. And my why when I started my business was I wanted to be home with my kids. I was a
Mm.
single mom. I was recently divorced. I wanted to be home with my kids. That meant more to me than giving me a lot of money to work outside the home. So by you're giving them what their needs are, you're communicating with them and going, okay, what's going to be the most benefit for you? And for a lot of these, and believe me, I'm money driven. So you're going to pay me a lot of money. But if it takes me away from my kids, it may not be the most beneficial for me. When it comes to how do you approach training and vetting EAs, executive assistants, to ensure that they're equipped to meet the specific needs of entrepreneurs or business people?
Let's hire for will and train for skill. So, entrepreneurs,
Mm.
it's so funny too. I see this now at Pareto when an entrepreneur comes in. Well, do they know HubSpot? Because we're on HubSpot. And in my mind, I'm like, dude, I could learn HubSpot in 2 hours. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, you are thinking about this all wrong. You want to find people that are driven and motivated and are willing to go the extra mile. You cannot teach care. You
Right.
can't teach or pay somebody to care. You can't really, and maybe this is a jaded perception, but I actually think it's really hard to teach people to be proactive. I'm not going to say you are or you aren't. I think that people can learn to be more proactive. And as an employer, I've given up. I'm like, if you're not proactive, you're fired. If you just sit around waiting to see what I don't have time, I don't have the patience, and I've got way too many amazing people chomping at the bit to actually do the job. So that whole like it's not my fault thing, don't play that game. We're done. I think that you find those people that really run through walls, and that's my favorite analogy, by the way, is run through walls. Because most people they run and they'll run for as long as there's a paved road. They'll run and they'll run at an okay clip. You know, you work at Quicken Loans and I'm going to put papers in front of you and you're going to do the paperwork that I ask you to do. And that's Quicken Loans. That's the assembly line model. That's the Henry Ford. That's treating people like they're automatons, like they scale. But the minute there's a wall, that person stops and stays stopped until somebody else comes along and shepherds them around the wall. You know, and it's like, oh, we're going to go around it, we're going to over, we're going to under it, we're going to go whatever. And then you meet employees that will actually be like, you know what? I wonder if there's a door in this wall. I wonder if this wall is porous. I wonder if this wall is made by paper. I wonder if this wall is at least see-through so I can see on the other side. And
Yeah.
they start to solve their own problems and make it around this wall. And when you find that human being, who cares if they know HubSpot? You know, who cares? Oh, can they manage? You know, it's just there's certain skill sets that are, what would you call them? Uh, Indications of proficiency and capability on a broader sense. So like, yeah, if you need an engineer, get an engineer, obviously. But and here's the thing that, you know, I've got some friends that are coders at the literal highest level. Once somebody knows a programming language, teaching them another programming language is actually not hard. But
Mm.
if you get a programmer that's not logical in their sequencing or doesn't approach like it's their thought process and their paradigm that's important. And so if you get somebody who's brilliant but doesn't know your language, I'd rather have them than somebody that knows the language but isn't thinking creatively or isn't thinking in a way that would allow them to bring more to the table than is being asked. So I think that hiring for will and training for skill it's the approach that all employers should take. And that's what we do at Pareto. We have an insane number of hoops people have to drop through. Insane. If they make it through the boot camp, the I mean, they're just, you know, I call them bloodthirsty assassins because there's just a part of it that's like, man, you really want this. The boot camp is not paid. We show them people that have been placed and the amount of money they make, and you know, it's more than they'd ever make domestically. And working from home again is a really big perk that most people don't have access to in these countries. Um, but by the time they've gone through the boot camp, learned everything that we've taught them, put them through all the training, had them do their final project. Everybody does a final project. What most of them don't realize, or maybe, you know, it's unfair for me to say that. I don't know if they realize it or not, but the tests aren't the tests that you think they are. You know, like you go in, you sit at the desk and you start filling out the bubbles on the Scantron and you think the Scantron is the test. But really, there's a group of scientists watching the secret camera to take a look at like who's being courteous, who put out the chair, who threw their trash away, who's trying to copy on somebody else's. And the Scantron means nothing. We never even put it into the computer. And so to use that as a metaphor, hire for will and train for skill. And there's a billion and one ways to find people that are willful and want the job. That's also not that I didn't come on this podcast expecting to push my book, but it's all in my book. So
No, we want to
find
talk
my
about the
book.
book. So share the
Book
book.
is free. It's not published yet, but when it's published, it'll be free. I'll never charge for a book again in my life. I don't believe in that anymore. But if somebody wanted the blueprint for hiring top talent, I wrote it all literally soup to nuts. They don't even need to go hire Pareto. They can just follow my blueprint. It's exactly what we do.
So tell us about the book. Where can we get it? Tell us about like what inspired you to write it and what can people expect from reading it?
Yeah. So you can get it for free at paretotalent.com/hire when the time comes.
Awesome.
And it should be published here within a month. We're waiting on the editor to just sharpen up my language because I did go to public school. So reading, writing, and arithmetic aren't necessarily my strong suits. I wrote the book I wish I had. The thing I'm best at is talent acquisition.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I wanted to write a book on delegation. That's what I sat down. The book I sat down to write was Delegation. And what was funny about it is every, not just chapter, every section, every paragraph, every sentence presupposed somebody effective to delegate to.
Mhm.
Because you can't, if you're surrounded by an army of idiots, you can't delegate. And most people that fail at delegation don't realize that they just don't have somebody good to delegate to, you know? It's like being on a basketball team with a bunch of crappy players
Yeah.
and I'm trying to teach you how to pass. It's like, well, actually, in your context, don't pass the ball. Keep the ball because those everybody else on your team can't shoot. So what I realized was I needed to write a book that taught people how to find top talent. Pareto talent is what I call them. The Pareto referring to the Pareto distribution, the 80-20 rule, where 20% of the input is responsible for 80% of the output. That's what you want. You want those 20% of people. And I wrote the book Hire, honestly, to get it out of the way so I could talk about the thing that I'm really excited to talk about, which is delegation. Because I think if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, delegation needs to be that's the thing that you work on most. That's your first line of defense. That is your skill set, is delegation. And for people that don't realize that, that's why they don't get to work on their business. They're working in their business. They think they own a business. They don't. They own a job. Yeah. So that's
So
that's
let's
where
talk
the book
about
came from.
delegation. So in your experience, what are the key benefits for businesses in delegating tasks to a well-trained EA, executive assistant?
Yeah. So if you're a business owner and you have anything on your to-do list or your calendar, you're probably doing it wrong unless that's something that you love to do or you're the only human being in the world that can do. That's the request. So I'd ask you to think of four columns. Picture four columns in your mind's eye. Column number one is $5 an hour work. This is work that probably can be automated, right? Like it's just rote, routine, redundant, obnoxious, not important. Column number two is $50 an hour work. This is work that needs to be trained for, but it's not hard. You could train anybody off the street to do it. Column three is $500 an hour work. This is real work. This is like sales or high-end sales, I should say, negotiation, ideation, product creation. This is where most business owners want to live, is in column three. What most people don't realize is there's a column four. Column four is $5,000 an hour work or more. And this is what I call the neo column. And the neo column is something that only you're capable of.
Hmm.
Oprah Winfrey was the only human being that could have hosted the Oprah Winfrey Show. And
Yeah.
she was amazing. And I don't think we realized how amazing she was until she left. And that's true for a lot of things. You know, Seinfeld, nobody knew how good he was until the last season when he's like, I'm not doing this anymore. And all of us were like, no, come back. Seinfeld, Oprah, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, love him or hate him. These are people that live in the fourth column. They're the only human in the world that can do what they do.
Mm.
Your goal in life, and I mean this professionally and personally, your goal in life should be to find that fourth column. What's the thing that only you can do? You're Spielberg, right? You're insert Ellen DeGeneres. Uh, what's the thing that you are Neo? That's your column four. While you're in column four, or while you're looking for column four, excuse me, 100% of your time should be spent in column three because column three will actually lead you to identifying your column four. And so you asked, what are the benefits of delegation? It's not getting the five, and that's what entrepreneurs do wrong. Like, oh, I delegated this $5 an hour task, and they did it, three of them, and it took an hour, so that's $15 worth of value. No, no, you didn't have to do that task. You saved 3 hours that you got to put in column three. That's $1,500 worth of value.
Mm.
They don't look at the opportunity cost, and that's the greatest cost. So the delegation framework isn't meant to measure the person you're delegating to, because here's the thing, you and I are always going to be better than most of the people we hire at early stage tasks, especially in the beginning. So if I delegate anything that I do to my EA, this takes me 20 minutes and it might take her 4 hours. Well, I bill my time out at infinity, right? So if it takes me 20 minutes and it saves me that 20 minutes and I get to put that 20 minutes into my column four and it
Right.
takes her 4 hours, who cares? Because that arbitrage still makes perfect sense to me. And you want to do this with your business owners, your C-level suite, your executive staff. Every human, you think about, especially your more expensive employees. I had a salesperson. He was one of the greatest salespeople that ever worked for me. His name is Mike Kim. He was our sales guy, lead sales guy at Solutions 8. Mike was the kindest, most empathic, most honest salesperson I've ever met in my life. And the bar is not high, by the way. Salespeople are horrible, especially in the paid ad space. And the thing about Mike was he was bad at managing processes. He wasn't good at like the follow up or, I mean, he was good at following with people. He wasn't good with the technical facets of that, entering information into the CRM, scoring leads, taking notes. And it's not that he wouldn't do it. It's just that it wasn't his highest and best use. And so it would take him time, and it wasn't his realm of genius. It wasn't his fourth column. And so I hired Mike, I hired my employee an EA, which most employers refuse to do. They're like, I'm paying you to do a job. I'm not going to pay somebody else to do the job I'm paying you to do. But what I did was I took Mike's time and I doubled the amount of time available. And so if you have, let's just use round numbers. I'm not going to air out Mike's laundry, but let's say that you have somebody that you're paying a six-figure sum to, and your high-end employees are costing you $250,000, and you get them an EA and you increase the amount of $250,000 that work they can do by double, you now have the equivalent of a $500,000 employee that you're paying 250 grand for because you got them a 30 grand a year EA. The math can't not pencil. It can't not pencil. You have to build a culture of delegation. And when you do, you push everybody into those higher columns.
You made a really good point there, because normally we hear if you can find your zone of genius, right? That's typically what we're told. Find entrepreneurs, business leaders, whatever, find your zone of genius and then delegate what's not your zone of genius. $5, whatever, less than what you would normally need to pay to someone else that can do it more efficiently. But typically we hear if it's going to take you 4 hours to do it and you can hire somebody to do it in 2 hours, then obviously that makes sense. You're doing it the flip side. You're like, it may take them 4 hours, but it's going to save me 20 minutes. That was really my big takeaway right there, because I've never heard that before.
Well, I think what it requires is a reframe as to how you value your time.
Yeah.
And your time, especially when you know you're Neo, you are the only one that can build your business, grow your brand, establish authority, do these podcasts. What happens, Heidi, if you start outsourcing the podcast? Like, does the quality suffer? Do people resonate as much? Or what's worse, let's say they actually resonate more, but in a direction or with values that aren't aligned with who you are and your brand, right? Like, there's no upside to trying to outsource your fourth column or even your third column. So go get rid of your first and second column, and efficiency be damned. Like you can't compare the value of not doing work that you shouldn't be doing so you can do work that you should be doing.
Wow. That was eye-opening for me. That was awesome. That was amazing. So I know I want to be respectful of your time, but what are some common challenges that because we want to talk about challenges. So what are some common challenges that businesses face when growing or quote unquote scaling? And how can leveraging outsourced talent help overcome these obstacles?
It's so frustrating because every problem you face as you grow, and this isn't true when you're at stasis or when you're maintaining, let's say, but the problems you face when you're at 300 grand gross rev, even though they look the same, let's say there's different kind of stones. So 300 grand gross rev, a million gross rev, 3 million gross rev, 5 million gross rev, 10 million gross rev, depending on the type of business that you're in. But in service businesses, those tend to be pretty consistent. You think 300 grand gross rev, I had an onboarding problem, let's say. The way that I would onboard my clients needed to be fixed. Well, what's funny about that is the solution at $300,000 caused massive catastrophe at a million. And then I'd solved it at a million, and then the solution at a million caused massive catastrophe at 3 million. I'll give you a very specific example. When we were growing, when we were scaling Solutions 8, the specialist, the Google Ads specialist, Unkar, the young man from India that I mentioned, was my least scalable asset because a smart Google Ads mine is critical, especially at the time when AI wasn't doing the work for you. And they were getting bogged down by having to talk to the clients and answer client questions. And some of these questions were the equivalent of like, is the computer on? And so we in order to grow and in order to allow the specialists to handle more clients, we split the role in half. And we said, we're going to have client managers and we're going to have specialists. And it allowed me to double my efficiency because specialists were expected to manage about 10 clients. When we added client managers, specialists could manage 30. And we paired them up. So there was a specialist and there was a client manager, and the client never, ever, ever met the specialist. They knew they existed, but they would talk to the client manager and they'd ask the questions, and the client manager was able to field 2 standard deviations of questions, right? It would be like, oh, how much do we spend this month? Oh, that's easier for me to pull up in Google Ads. And then, maybe something a little deeper, like, are our search terms performing? And that's easy for me as a client manager. And anything past that, it's like, hey, I'm just the client manager. Let me talk to your specialist and I'll come back to you next week with an answer. It was a beautiful, elegant solution, and it helped us to continue to scale. Here's what's funny. When we scaled, we started getting bigger clients that spent more money. So my average spend went from, 10 grand a month to 50 to 100 grand a month. The 50 to $100,000 a month client does not want to talk to the client manager that cannot answer the questions. Because instead of being on the phone with the business owner who's trying to manage everything and doesn't necessarily understand it all, you're on the phone with a CMO or a director of marketing who's saying, I need to know what our search impression share is right now today. I need to know what our and they need to talk to a competent human. And so this solution, when I was small, became this massive problem when we grew, and we had to introduce a new role called the strategist. And so there was client manager, specialist at the bottom, and a strategist at the top. And it became this triangle, this trifecta. And if a client reached $50,000 in ad spend, they had direct access to their strategist. And the strategists were people that could do client management and specialist work both. And they were pulled. Some of them came from our specialists. Most of them actually came from our specialist pool. Some of them actually came from our client management pool because they got so good at Google Ads. And it was this really elegant solution to an inelegant problem that I had created myself because I had a fix that when we were small was a fix. And then when we grew, it actually ended up being the bug. So don't get romantic about how you make your money. Don't be committed to a model. As you grow in scale, the things that you thought were solutions or problems and the things that you thought were problems actually end up being massively profitable to and for you. That last piece actually is worth paying attention to. If you're having a problem or if your clients are having a problem, for example, all of our clients had a really difficult time installing all of their tracking, especially as our clients got big. You're dealing with people with $100,000 ad spends. They have really advanced, in-depth, deep ecosystems, tech stacks, many stakeholders, and installing tracking codes was an absolute, complete, total nightmare. Well, is it? Or is it an opportunity to charge a whole lot of money to do something that's actually pretty basic once you have SOPs in place and you are willing to assume the responsibility for it because you know how to implement the checks and balances? So this big problem that kept many agencies from being able to take on some of these clients became not just a road that I was able to pave so I got the client, but also a massive profit center. So solutions become problems, problems become solutions, and you have to be willing to enter that flywheel. That's entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's just an ongoing cycle, and
Yeah.
growth comes with growing pains, and it's a matter of how do we overcome the next it's just like getting uncomfortable with, when fear kicks in, and you're reminding me of the whole fear syndrome. Like, you know what, when we get comfortable and we're in our comfort zone, we're happy. There's no fear, there's no growth. But when we're about to step out and get to the next level, oh, it shows up again because we're not used to it. It's not comfortable. We haven't been there yet. So yeah, you're just sharing exactly that. So thank you for that. My last question, what advice would you give to businesses looking to optimize their operations through effective delegation and utilization of remote talent?
The first thing is don't treat remote talent like remote. Make them feel like they're a part of the team.
Yeah.
We have a Friday on all hands call, and we have group Slack channels, and some of them are just fun and extracurricular. It's like post pictures of your pets or your kids or, where you're traveling. The second one is delegate projects, not tasks. I saw this really interesting thing posted to LinkedIn today. It said that if a manager is pulling the strings, he or she can't blame the puppet for what it does. And so if you're sitting there saying, change red to blue and change the circle to square, well, you're not delegating, you're just micromanaging. Delegate end-to-end projects. And the way to think about it is it's the black box of delegation. Here's everything you have available to you. Here are all the resources. Here are the brand guidelines. Here's the money we're willing to spend. Here's the software. Here are the key stakeholders. Here's my end result. My desired end result is a new training program for inbound employees that help them understand this thing, or a new marketing program, whatever it is. Here's everything you have. Here's my desired end result. What happens in the box? None of my business. And for you that are like, I don't like that logo, or I think that website should be, shut up. Are you out of your freaking mind? Authorship creates ownership. So who cares if you don't like it? Chances are they're right and you're wrong anyway. But if you let people take things and run with them and feel like they have a sense of ownership with them, like it's always going to be better than you being like, change that, do this, change that, do. And then guess what they do? What any logical human being in the world would do? They take their hands off the wheel. They're like, all right, bro, you're driving here. So you just keep telling me. And then employers get mad because when they're done micromanaging and they've lost the enthusiasm for the project or the new shiny object or whatever, they're like, oh, I can't get these people to take ownership. I can't get them to lead. And it's like, yeah, you killed the initiative. So black box of delegation, delegate projects, not tasks, give people desired end results. And then honestly, if they can't fulfill on that, you probably have the wrong person in place. That's what
Yeah.
you want in an organization. You know, go get those people that'll run through walls.
You want to find, yeah, I love that. And you're going to find out quicker, sooner than later, if they're the right
100%.
person or not. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Go work
Um,
at Quicken Loans. If you need me to tell you every single thing at every single step at every place, like, go be an automaton. That's
yeah.
punch in, punch out.
Yeah, I was on a podcast once and somebody asked me in the fact like what I thought was true leadership. And I said, you know what? Part of it's giving your people ownership.
Mm,
It's not telling them and micromanaging them. That's not leadership. It's allowing them to have that open door policy and also allowing them to take ownership of what they're doing and be part of the process and acknowledging them for that. They're going to make mistakes and allow them. Right? Allow them to make mistakes and allow them to grow from it because none of us are perfect. Even in the
mm,
leadership positions, we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. So if you really want true people that are going to be loyal and be on board with taking ownership and wanting this company to grow as much as you do, I want to say embroiled. Is that a word? Embroiled in your vision, like really connected to your vision, then
mm.
you need to allow them to give them the space to take ownership of that and run with it and run through walls, just like you said. That's going to be my new mantra, run through walls. So thank you, Kasim. This has been an
Yeah,
amazing
love that.
conversation. So how do we connect with you? For the people that are listening and they're like, I need to connect with Kasim, how do they reach out to you?
If they want an EA, they can email me, Kasim at ParetoTalent.com. I shoot a YouTube video every single day, so you can go find me on YouTube,
Every
Kasim at
day.
Kasim
You're a
Aslam.
content creator.
Every day. Yeah. It's I have the first 2 hours of my day are blocked off just for content creation. And I do private consulting. I've got a mastermind. You can go to kasim.me, Kasim.me, and there's a lot of fun stuff going on. So I appreciate you having me on, Heidi. And for anybody listening, if there's something I could have done better, please let me know. Would love to hear any feedback.
I'm so grateful for you to be here. And there's just so much more that we can dive into, but we're already over time. So I apologize for that. But like I just want to talk to you about productivity. How you're handling it all and juggling it all is beyond just blows my mind. But we don't have time for that. So that's another conversation, hopefully for another day. Hopefully you'll come back and chat with me. But definitely connect with Kasem. Go to the website and we're gonna send you all the information. If you're driving and you're like, how do I reach out to him? We have all of Qasim's information in the show notes. So definitely check him out there. And again, what is your website, Qasim? And how do we get your book? We go
Oh,
to
the book, go to paretotalent.com/hire,
Hire.
HIRE,
Okay.
hire. And the book will be called Hire.
Yeah.
And that'll be free. So it'll be on Amazon. You can pay for it if you want to. If you're like dying to have it in Kindle format or you have to have it paperback, that's perfectly fine. But we're gonna give it away.
Absolutely. And Pareto.com is Pareto. So it's Pareto dot,
Pareto.
yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
Pareto.com/hire. Go
Oh,
grab that.
paretotalent.com/hire.
ParetoTalent.com. Yes, ParetoTalent.com. It's Pareto talent.com/hire. I'm grabbing it. Make sure you grab it and make sure you connect with him and reach out to him. Thank you so much, Kasim, for being here. I'm so grateful for your time and just, being here with me today.
Thank you for having me, Heidi. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. So if you feel like your business is blending in and you're ready to grow your visibility, be seen as the expert in your space and scale, quote unquote, scale to the next level, then grab your Spotlight to Scale blueprint at spotlight to scale blueprint.com slash or spotlight to scale.com/slash blueprint. Go grab that. It's free download for you for being here and joining us today. Thank you again, Kasem. This has been such an inspiring and informational. I'm excited to go grab your book and learn more. And I hope you'll come back. Like, really, this is like, I just love your energy. This has been just such a joyful conversation for me. And I really hope you'll come back and see us soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Business Growth Spotlight podcast.